Hello everyone, this is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of I the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful, Rabbit Hole, King Dio, and the upcoming Lauren Frey, available now for pre-order. So with the acquisition buyout from Ubisoft, going straight to Uncle Bill Gates himself, the Lord and Savior of all of humanity, we really need to reflect and think about why this came about and why this happened and what it means for the industry, specifically industry cancer and plague Sony PlayStation. The plague, like the living embodiment of the Black Death itself, Sony. What you have to understand is that Sony has a long history of paying for exclusive content on their consoles. Like, that's actually why the vast majority of third-party consoles jump ship from the N64, from Nintendo consoles to the PlayStation, because Sony paid for it. Being a much bigger company than Nintendo, they were able to throw a lot of their weight around, preventing Nintendo and Sega from acquiring a lot of the best developers, which led to like a bit of a drought on both systems, which led to Sega folding and Nintendo struggling for a brief period before resurfacing with the Wii and becoming bigger than ever. Sony only became as prominent as they were due to money heading so many studios and paying for timed exclusive content. This was their modus operandi for decades. They've been doing this forever. People don't talk about it. People like to pretend that like PlayStation was cutting edge technology that developers just couldn't wait to go. No. They were paid. It was a contract. It was a deal, and those developers don't want to go for those deals to go badly, which is why they always talk smack about Nintendo and back in the day Sega, right? They wanted to keep those lucrative Sony deals going. So what happened when Microsoft came along is that they initially tried to do the same thing Nintendo was doing. Just release a console and kind of build up their first-party studios and try to compete with the PlayStation 2. But eventually what they realized by the time the 360 rolled around is that they really needed to become competitive when it came to paying for exclusive content. So they were doing their own money hatting. They were doing their own deals. They were getting exclusive games from BioWare. The original Mass Effect was a 360 exclusive. They were getting early expansions. They were doing all this stuff that PlayStation fans weren't getting right away. And so for the next 15 years, right, what happens is that both of these companies are throwing all this money at third-party developers, trying to get them to favor them over the other. Resident Evil 8, Sony paid for it not to come to Xbox Game Pass, because that would have been big for Xbox Game Pass if it had come day one. Microsoft does this and that, Sony retaliates. It's an endless battle between these two giant companies, conglomerates that have essentially unlimited money to throw around in this fashion, supporting all these smaller developers that aren't selling shit on non-Nintendo hardware. So what ends up happening is that Phil Spencer comes along and realizes that we can take this method and use it against Sony. So instead of paying for exclusive content in games, they straight up buy the companies themselves and prevent them from coming to PlayStation at all. And that's kind of where we're at, is that Microsoft, being a significantly larger company than Sony, by simply acquiring the studios and making them Xbox, PC, and Nintendo exclusive, Sony is left in the dust. There simply isn't any content to pay for anymore. Sony, there are no major third parties to just kind of throw money at and just get exclusive content that you have your paid game journalist shills promote for a week before it's forgotten in favor of the next big thing. The PS4 generation, the cracks were already starting to show with them hyping up stuff like Knack and Octodad as if they were some big deal back in the day. Ico, that's a big reason why Ico is so well remembered, even though it's completely mediocre and not all that interesting. It's because it was a small exclusive Sony game that had a lot of positive coverage among the corrupt gaming media. So did Silent Hill 2. So did So did all these other declining PlayStation brands. Like, they just had a lot of positive coverage that just got seeped into the mainstream because of that. Because of the Nintendo equivalents went by completely ignored. So with Xbox acquiring all these studios, preventing these games from coming out on PlayStation at all, PlayStation suddenly has no ability to stay competitive. They have no exclusive titles of their own. They torpedoed that with the release of The Last of Us Part 2. Like, people have tried to say Ghost of Tsushima or Death Stranding is able to salvage it, and that's just not going to happen. They don't have third-party support because they're all being acquired by Microsoft, or worse, ignoring the PlayStation exclusive deals to develop games for Nintendo Switch because of Sony's ridiculous censorship policies and anti-Japan stance. It is legit. We have legit reached the point where putting games on Nintendo consoles and having them sell is making developers more money than taking the lucrative Sony deals. That's how ridiculous the gap in popularity between the Switch and the PlayStation brand is right now. Like, Switch is just dominating, and of course you have like Sony's trying to salvage their brand by putting all their biggest games on PC. Stuff like God of War, stuff like Horizon Zero Dawn, stuff like Death Stranding. But it's not really doing a whole lot for the brand. It really isn't. If anything, it's just annoying fanboys. It's just it feels like they're just delaying the inevitable. It really does. It really does feel like, out of nowhere, that Sony PlayStation may not be a thing next console generation. It really does feel like we're reaching the point where, like, this platform cannot remain viable under the current ecosystem. Like, people have too many alternatives. They have too many superior alternatives. Game Pass is dominating with it when it comes to the AAA sphere, which appeals to normies, and then, like, the enthusiast crowd has the Switch and PC. So what exactly does PlayStation offer anyone other than corrupt game journalists trying to look for a paycheck? Like, essentially nothing. Phil Spencer has pulled a power move and essentially prevented PlayStation, I think, from being able to compete ever again. They're straight up done at this point. And it's only a matter of time until we start seeing new players enter the console market. People have talked about Apple forever. Google and Amazon are trying to do their thing with the streaming service. You have like Chinese giants like Tencent. Like my prediction has always been that like consoles will be phased out in favor of these these streaming services by these big corrupt companies. Nintendo will remain developing Switches, and they will dominate the console space. But we're going to kind of see the gaming evolve past that. Like, essentially, what I say happened is that Nintendo has won the console war, but like gaming will continue to evolve and develop past consoles. They'll be built into hardware. They'll be streaming over the internet. You'll be able to play them on a wide variety of platforms. I don't think Nintendo is going to have to evolve in order to deal with Xbox Game Pass, and I think they already have set the groundwork for it with Nintendo Switch Online and having all their legacy content available on Nintendo Switch. That's a good start, and I think they will keep that going and keep improving on it and keep delivering a superior experience to Xbox Game Pass. Xbox Game Pass is not a good service, but at the moment it's being promoted really, really heavily by game journalists and the like. I eventually see. Well, at the moment, they seem to be doing very, very well for themselves. They're making all these acquisitions. The price point is low and reasonable. It's not all that. The service works. Like my problem with the service is just like the fundamental aspect of it. But it does work. Like, it's not like completely broken or anything like that. I think eventually, though, the money is going to run out because I don't see this business model being sustainable. Just having everything on Game Pass for $15 a month, like it just screams impractical to me. You know what I mean? Like how exactly are developers going to nickel and dime you like that? I don't see that being profitable. I think eventually Microsoft is going to start like feeling the burn from all the money they have to dish out when their service starts declining in popularity. When it starts peaking off, which I think is inevitable. We'll see how this develops. It's an interesting situation for sure. Like, people always throw around this term "too big to fail" when describing companies like Sony and Microsoft, but I really don't think that's the case. I really don't. I think eventually we will see Microsoft leave the console industry as well.